as we lead towards this fourth anticipated Matrix movie, which I'm anticipating not because I love the Matrix, but also because I love the Wachowskis. I'm so excited for this new film coming.
Do you love the Matrix, or the Matrix telling you to love the Matrix?
I mean, either way. I'd go back in if the Matrix were actually me watching the Matrix in the movies forever. We're talking the Animatrix, which was released kind of as a promotional thing. We'll get into some of the details about the film as we discuss here, but
it's in between Reloaded and Revolutions.
Yeah, and so we got to break down these elements as we go through it, because the Animatrix is one of those underseen films because it's animated, I really think.
Yeah.
Today on Kyle and Nick on Film, we're going Animatrix style. Welcome back to the show. I'm one of your hosts, Kyle Goethe.
I'm Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast, and we'd like to thank The Last Comic Shop, another show that we're good friends with. You can find it on YouTube, anywhere you find podcasts. It's simply a comic book review. Check it out if you can find it.
Yep, and another special shout out today to Deep Focus Review, one of our $5 patrons, level 2 and up. As part of the Patreon for level 2 means that you get to get shout outs throughout the various episodes. You also get to tell us what to do. We love getting told what to do in terms of movies, because there's millions of movies and only 2 people. And you also get to take part in some of the special Q&A sessions that we have every single month. So you can be just like Deep Focus Review by clicking on the link down below and checking out the Patreon. Today we're talking the Animatrix.
Yes!
So the Animatrix is an anthology of shorts taking place both before the Matrix and leading up to the beginning of The Matrix Reloaded, chronicling various viewpoints in the world of The Matrix, from backgrounds of its minor characters to the very beginning of the machine apocalypse, all asking important questions about the nature of humanity in a world created by machines.
So this anthology, animation anthology, probably got an inspiration from, like what we already talked about, Heavy Metal, which is an animation anthology. But this anthology works. I want to emphasize, it is beautifully crafted works, where I think Heavy Metal, where it's like, maybe we could put this in front, maybe the behind. This, everything has a lead up that pays off at the end.
See, and what's interesting about this film, because I don't know if I mentioned the Animatrix when we talked Heavy Metal. I mentioned the Van Helsing prequel short film. I remember that one. And I felt like this film also is very similar in terms of, like, it's kind of an add-on. It's a special feature film, if you will. You don't need it to understand.
No, I remember when when this came out, and people were like, you don't have to watch this for the next one, because Evolutions is going to come out. Everybody, of course, went to the theater to see Reloaded, and we like, this is strictly to rental. You couldn't go to the theater to see us.
Yeah.
And so it was almost advertised like, you don't have to, but if you want to enhance your experience, you should watch this.
Yeah, because I remember I showed my parents the Matrix movies, and before we watched the first one, I showed them the second Renaissance Part 1 and 2, which is the animated prequel, if you will. It tells the beginnings of the machine apocalypse. Because I was like, I felt like those two, those were two were written by the Wachowskis. I felt like those two were important if I felt that you weren't going to get it. Because there's a lot of heady stuff in the Matrix, and I think those two short films help to kind of, strengthen the mythology of the overall world that we're in. It kind of came about that the Wachowskis ended up going on tour to promote the Matrix. They ended up meeting up with a number of animators that they had told had inspired the film. Animators that they were very proud to have been inspired by. Yeah. Those animators said that they were in turn inspired by the Matrix, and they decided to kind of make.
It's always like man make a machine likes a man. And
yeah, exactly. So
like
what works in there is that they got a chance to have multiple animators that they liked give their own fresh spin. The Wachowskis wrote 4 of the short films: The Final Flight of the Osiris, the 2 second Renaissance shorts, and Kid's Story, which I think are the ones that are most most integral.
Kid's Story with the cat.
That's with the kid who jumps.
Okay.
Yeah, the one who basically we meet him in Reloaded.
Right.
Yeah. So these are the 4 that are kind of most integral to the overall mythology. And what's interesting, Nick, where'd you watch the movie?
I watched it on HBO Max.
So what's interesting is I learned that depending on which version of the film you watch, the shorts are reordered, which is weird. On HBO Max, which is where I watched it most recently, the order is more like timeline chronology. Like it starts with Second Renaissance. Whereas my DVD, the version that I've watched for decades, starts with The Final Flight of the Osiris. And then it does the 2 second Renaissance films. And then
it plays the order, and then you mess with it.
It's I don't mind the order on the HBO Max version of it, but it feels very forcibly chronological. Yeah. Whereas I feel like the order's a little bit better even on the DVD, because it does start you off with kind of the most easily accessible ones. Final Flight of the Osiris is literally the opening of that film, and it's the one that leads into The Matrix Reloaded. Like in The Matrix, small spoiler if you haven't seen the second film, we're going to talk about
that's
it.
The computer
That's
generator.
the message that's sent out in the final flight of the Osiris is the message they receive that the machines are digging towards Zion. Like that's a big deal that's part of it. And it's also got that like extra flair to it of like two people nude, slashing each other.
Right, it's the computer one.
Yeah, it's the CG one that's created there. Yeah,
it's really good.
And it's probably my favorite because of how it connects. Like if you watch no other short from this collection, but just that one, it leads right into Reloaded. And as I've said before, Reloaded is my favorite Matrix movie. So like having any extra,
footage,
flair is always
kind of like that stuff like that, right? But you have different styles that are definitely unique to them and work by themselves, but like an anthology, it all works together because you have a core of a theme that you have this conflict, you have this contrast all the time, and you have contrast in different styles all together. Even the track star, which theme doesn't really fit, but it makes sense to have it in there.
Yeah, when I again these the different shorts, many of the ones that I like the most are the ones that ask questions about the mythology, that kind of test the mythology, because there are things that I question. I question like, if Neo is the one and they're trying to get him out, why doesn't a agent try to overtake him? Because then you could eliminate Neo that way. And I think like
he's stuck in the pod.
And it's similar to how the detective story,
yeah.
which I'm assuming is your favorite one, channels the idea of the detective as being almost overtaken by an agent as he's trying to escape. Like that's a really cool added piece of the mythology that we don't get.
Yeah. So the noir one, and I do like the one. It's obviously, of course, but what I like about it is a cliche. It's definitely like 1984 Brazil, Maltese Falcon, and you use those kind of things, and it's black and white, but it has an important message that plays into the Matrix and the incorporating Trinity. I think it's actually her voice.
Trinity is actually
Carrie-Anne, right? Yeah, and it fits to all the little bits of struggles that we remember never seeing in the movie. That constant, always have to fight. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because it's one of the few ones. That's one of the few ones where the style of the short makes you question like where this. Like, is that just a style for us as viewers? Is it what our main character detective sees when he opens his eyes? Is that how he perceives the Matrix? Because maybe he grew up reading detective novels? Like maybe his world kind of became like that. I like the shorts that kind of feel like they bleed into the overall narrative. And I like the ones that test the system. The final one on the DVD, I don't remember where it is in the order on HBO Max, is called Matriculated. And it's where we have a team of humans that are catching machines and trying to Stockholm syndrome them basically into being allies instead of enemies.
Yeah.
And I really like the drug trip of that one, where they like take a machine and plug it into their program and try to sway it to becoming human. It's a really cool idea, something I wouldn't have thought about.
And there's a lot of, of course, a lot of them use a lot of color. There's definitely a lot of psychedelics, but there's lots of grounded, very like dirty and grimy noirs as well. So you're going to get an entire journey. There's a lot of action. There's a lot of quiet. There's, wars and battles, but there's also the girl and her cat.
Yeah.
So you're going through the whole little roller coaster, and it doesn't feel like very taxing at all.
Yeah, and I think it's a beautiful thing in that with anthologies, if you don't like one in 10 minutes, you got a different one. I don't think there's a bad short in this collection.
No.
The weakest one for me might be Beyond, which is, as you said, the cat one in the house. Because it kind of felt like Studio Ghibli by way of Thor: The Dark World, where like they've got this like really weird house story, but it's it doesn't feel to me like it asks enough. Like it asks questions, but it doesn't dive into that mythology part of the question.
And I think they probably thought we already asked enough. Let's just have a nice quiet.
Yeah, and it's more just kind of like a goofy, fun little like short about like a glitch in the Matrix.
Initially, when I thought, I was like, oh, they're gonna show like all the humans are gone.
Oh, so, yeah, like they're gonna see something. Like that's gonna trigger.
That's what I thought, because it's all quiet, the streets are empty. I was like, oh, we're gonna see the clip of all the humans are gone now, and everything, and all the thing is left is animals doing whatever the hell they want. But that's my contribution if I did it.
Well, and one of the other ones that I've grown to enjoy more, because it was probably my least favorite when I first watched the film, was Program, which is set in a program. It's set in a program in feudal Japan, in like a testing thing where the main character is fighting a bunch of villains, testing herself.
Heavy metal.
Yeah, and she's talking with Duo, who's another character who's kind of pulling a cipher, and he's like, "I'm gonna go back in. Like I'm not gonna be out here anymore. I'd rather be in the Matrix.
Yeah.
And I like that the twist ending to that one, mild spoiler alert if you haven't seen the film, of course, is that Duo is testing her. Could she put down one of her own team if they were going to betray them and go into the Matrix? And I like that. That feels like this program might have been created after Cypher did what he did in the Matrix, where it's like we have to now test our own people to see which one of them is gonna, betray us.
But it asks the big question.
Yeah,
it asks the big question.
Yeah, it asks the big question, and it adds the mythology. That's what I really think is so cool about this, is that it's again like somebody adding cinnamon sugar on the top of your banana bread. Yeah. The banana bread's fine without it, but man, it certainly tastes better with it.
So largely why this got ignored is because it was just kind of almost treated like an advertising prop of more money to accumulate, but it's a great service provider to the entire world. I think if you love Matrix, you cannot really ignore this.
Well, I was one of those guys that I was the one you were swaying when you put this movie out to purchase, because I'm the guy that buys all the crap. I'm the guy who I like Children of the Corn. Let me buy the 9 sequels and hunt them down over time. I'm the guy who you're selling this movie to.
Yeah.
And that's why I was so surprised that it was not trash. And part of it is, again, depending on
that hesitation, because it's regarded as just an add-on.
Yeah.
That you think is just going to be a spillover that you don't really care about.
And Adult Swim aired the film with some minor cuts for the violence and the nudity of the robot. But they cut the film together in one order. The DVD has a different order. And the reason for that, too, is that some of these shorts were added in preceding other films. So again, felt like a 10-minute commercial for check out The Matrix Reloaded. In fact, Final Flight of the Osiris did play in some theaters before The Matrix Reloaded as kind of like a little teaser, hey, check out, we added 10 more minutes of the movie for you.
So before the movie started, you had this little thing.
They would show that, and then they would also have some of the other shorts would get played ahead of other films in certain countries, in certain areas. So again, it felt like they just crafted these shorts so that they could use them to sell other shorts, and that's probably what the company thought. But I like that the Wachowskis, even when they're given an opportunity to sell merch, they add a lot. Like the Enter the Matrix video game, they wrote a lot of that story. They worked with the creators to create an actual story that's in universe.
If I remember right, came out after the entire trilogy.
Yeah, where you could play as I think Nairobi, the character Jada Pinkett Smith plays. Right. You play as her in the film, and you get to kind of add some more flavor to the world. And I like that they don't cut corners when it comes to making their universe bigger, and that's why I'm more excited for this upcoming film. Is that I know that there's the only reason they would return
is to have something interesting to say, right? And that's the catch, because a lot of the advertisement was just another spill off and cheap, and I think you'll be lazy about it. But they actually took meticulous detail of the structure of it and really worked with people that know what they're doing and are really good at it.
Yeah.
And even though you have the samurai or the old samurai story or everything, but it fits into it, even though it's highly stylized. It doesn't look like it does.
Yeah.
But fits very well.
Mm-hmm. And I like that, Kid's story, for example, the one where we meet Kid before he's in The Matrix Reloaded, and we get to learn how he was freed. He was kind of brought into it by Neo, who was brought into it by Morpheus. So you get that cyclical energy that the master becomes the apprentice becomes the new master, and you get that element of it doesn't. If you don't have it, it's fine. But now when you watch The Matrix Reloaded, it adds an extra special bit of care to this kid. You want this kid to do well. You want him to survive because you've seen what he's gone through, in much the same way that Neo did.
I get to love it because in The Matrix he decides how deep do you want to. I'll show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. Alice in Wonderland, and they use that reference in in this Animatrix. Go how deep the rabbit hole, the Alice in Wonderland. So definitely a lot of rolled references that you can enjoy from the movie.
Yeah. So we talked about favorite shorts. Mine was Osiris. Yours was Detective Story.
Of course it was.
What's your least favorite one?
I would say that even though I do like the style of it, I think you could take out Track Star.
Okay. Yeah. I think that one's kind of the most tangentially connected to the others, where it adds some flavor. I like that kind of the idea of peak performance, doing what you're most passionate about, is a thing that could free you from the Matrix.
And then the ending of it. Yeah. But it's definitely doesn't. I think if I take it out, it works. I think it's stylized really well. I do like the style and art of it.
I like the action in that one. where there's that kind of ticking clock of trying to get past the finish line, but you're being hunted at the same time.
But I think if you pull the animation back a little bit, that's too close up. I think we're focusing too much on getting the screen full, where if you just pull it back a little bit and do the whole body, that you have a much more success.
Yeah, and I think these are all just nitpicks because I think we obviously enjoyed all of them.
Right, yeah, we have to what's wrong with it, right?
Yeah. But that's kind of the beauty of it, is that when you enjoy something, we can pick it apart a little bit and still say, hey,
it does flow. Everything does have a flow to it, even though like the noir one looks. If you think about it, you think it'll look stiff, but there is a lot of action, even though there's what we would call exterior shots. But it's like, oh my god, I want to see more of this world.
Yeah, I almost wish there was like a second Animatrix or like something where, because it's not like at this point with that giant world, the universe you created, and in the time period of cinematic universes right now, the fact that they are only now returning to the Matrix, because there was talk about a young Morpheus movie at one point. I think one of the co-writers for X-Men was going to try and do that, and I think they were looking at Michael B. Jordan.
It got into pre-production. I don't know what happened there.
Yeah, I think at that point, then that was when they reached out to the Wachowskis and they were like, "Do you guys have anything you want to bring to this table?" And I think Lana's the director. I think Lana's the one directing this new film.
Okay.
And she was like, "Well, I have this idea clearly," and that's when they just kind of were like, "Okay, young Morpheus is gone." But it's amazing to me that we haven't gotten more expansion on this universe since 2003. Because if you think about it, we had 3 Matrix movies in 2003. The Animatrix, Reloaded, and Revolutions all dropped in 1 year. That's Marvel levels of releases.
Right, yeah, and it's. I think they actually filmed Reloaded and Revolutions at the same time.
Yep.
So almost like Superman 1 and 2. Yeah, and like I said, you really, if you, this is just an add-on, I don't really want to be invested. I'm fine with what I just know about the Matrix from the live-action movies. But I think if you love film, if you love what you have to almost force yourself to watch it. You'll still get enjoyment out of it.
Yeah, and I think ever since owning the Animatrix, I've never not watched it in conjunction with the other films. When I marathon, it's Matrix 1, Animatrix, Reloaded, Revolutions. I always marathon them like that because, again, it's a side story collection, but those side stories strengthen your overall appreciation of the film. It's kind of similar to Batman Gotham Knight, which was a collection of shorts that were set in the Nolan-verse. That are set between Batman Begins and The Dark Knight. I never not watch Gotham Knight when I'm watching the Nolan movies. I always break off after Begins to watch that before getting to The Dark Knight. And every time I do, the people I'm watching it with are like, "Why do we have to sit through this?" And I'm like, "Just do it." And that's kind of how I would treat the Animatrix.
I don't know. That's it. It's short. It's only like an hour and 40 minutes.
It's an hour 40, but I think like 10 to 15 minutes of it is all the credits because there's 9 different sets of filmmakers. So it's really not that long of a movie.
No.
Have you seen it? It's on HBO Max. And I think
like I said, if you haven't seen it, it's almost like a force. Like, all right, somebody totally have to watch it. But it's enjoyment.
I think definitely give the first 2, because on the HBO Max version, it starts with the Second Renaissance, which I think are the 2 most worthy ones to watch if you want the extra mythology piece. So I would say start with that. If you don't like it at that point, you can duck out. That's fine. But check it out on HBO Max and let us know your thoughts on the Animatrix down below. Is it your favorite Matrix movie or least favorite? Let us know. And don't forget, you guys can like, comment, subscribe, check out that Patreon like Deep Focus Review did, and join the Patreon where you can help us pick maybe the next series of movies that we're going to talk about. Hey, there's plenty of time for that. So once again, everyone, my name is Kyle Goethe. You can find all my film reviews on GoFilmReviews.com.
I'm Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast, and you can also find The Last Comic Shop, too, anywhere you find podcasts.
All right, we'll see you for The Matrix Reloaded next week.